You are now listening to The Unwavering, the movement dedicated to educating and empowering the brave men and women who have or are still serving our great nation. What's up, everyone? This is Kevin with another episode of The Unwavering. Before we begin, as always, just a huge thank you to the military community, all the active duty forces, the reservists, as well as those veterans and their families. This project of ours has truly been a blessing. It has allowed us to communicate with the community, and we are constantly connecting with new people who have either experiences, knowledge, or connections and opportunities for you guys to benefit from. So we're just super excited to have this platform and to be able to speak to you. And today we have a special guest who has an abundance of knowledge when it comes to the world of business, education, and military service. So at this time, I will go ahead and hand it over to Evan and let him introduce himself.
Hey guys, I'm Evan Thomsen. I was in the Army for 5 years, serving in the 82nd Airborne Division as the musical director of the a cappella choir there. Since then, I worked in international development as a humanitarian and then transitioned into business as an entrepreneur and consultant.
Awesome. Well, Evan, again, huge thank you for you coming on board today. And it's cool because this episode specifically showcases how different and how diverse the military community is. I think oftentimes when people from outside communities think about soldiers, airmen, Marines, sailors, they have a really skewed vision of what it is that we do. And the truth is, you have people from all different walks of life, and they have so many different jobs or MOSs in the military that it's not really one size fits all. As you mentioned, you came from a music background while you were in the military, but you expanded your knowledge on business, specifically international business. And I think it's just a really powerful example that we are far more than what people think.
I still buzz cut my head and do a lot of push-ups though. So
Yeah, I won't say that all their opinions or thoughts are wrong. As you said, some of us stay active, some of us still use military jargon. So, yes, there are some things that will never leave us. But again, just realizing that we are very diverse, and I am extremely grateful for the different people that I've been able to meet, the different jobs I've learned about, and really how that translates into the civilian sector. Because as much as people would like to, you can't stay in the military forever. Eventually, there will come a day where either you or the military decide it's time for you to hang up the uniform. So we will kind of lead that into today's episode. For those people who do get out, oftentimes one of the greatest benefits that they have coming out of the military service is the ability to go to school and use their education bill. But before we get to that topic specifically, I want to ask you, at what point do you think you realized the value in education? Was it before or after the military?
definitely before I realized the value of it, but I wasn't necessarily doing anything about that appropriately. But during the military was when I really started to take it seriously. At that point in time, I was kind of fortunate that my dad actually served a career in the Army. So I kind of had a bit of a leg up. I didn't have to access completely new information from untrusted sources. He obviously knew a lot about military programs and benefits and stuff like that. So I was able to speak with him and learn a lot and then kind of go my own route from there. So he kind of got me started, really. He kind of like got the ball rolling in the tuition assistance program. And then from there, not as a way to brag, but hopefully as a way to motivate, I think I'm either the number one or tied for number one as done the most with their education benefits as you could possibly do.
That's awesome. Can we kind of discuss some of those things, like what degrees have you done while you were on active duty? What kind of led you to that decision, and what are some of the programs you took advantage of?
Definitely. So when I was active, so when I was, in the 82nd, I started using tuition assistance. Generally, people recommend that you go to the education centers. I didn't really find that very useful, but in general, the education center, they have universities coming to them and providing them programs that conform to the very specific and somewhat limited tuition assistance per credit hour billing rate criteria. And a school that's attempting to conform and contort a program to meet that need is likely not a school that anyone is going to be overly interested in. Not a guarantee, but just in general, right? That's a general rule. So at the end of the day, the education center is probably not a enlightening or motivating resource. And so I kind of went outside of that and just started looking for universities and looking for programs that I was interested in. And again, this is where my dad kind of pushed me in the right direction, and that was really helpful. He recommended a really, really interesting program at a smaller university in international security and intelligence studies, which is a pretty unique degree. There's not a lot of people with a degree kind of like that. It kind of bracketed like international affairs and security and conflict and strategy and a lot of things like that. So it was a lot of fun. It was pretty unique, but it was slightly above the tuition assistance per credit hour threshold. So I had to pay a tiny, tiny, tiny bit out of pocket. But that's the type of thing where it's like, because it's outside that threshold, it's not at the military center. You know what I mean? It was, again, only the tiniest amount that then became a tax write off for me. So I virtually, at the end of the day, paid nothing for that. And that's how I got my undergraduate degree, in addition to clepping out of programs. I think I clepped out of 10 classes in like 2 weeks. So I just went there every single day and just took a test to finish another class. If you don't know what clepping is, it's where you take a test, and if you get a good enough grade, it certifies you within that entire class. So instead of taking Psychology 101, for example, I just took a test. Instead of taking advanced algebra, I just took a test and proved that I didn't need to take the class. So that's another program that you have access to for free while in the military, and typically that would cost a lot. Probably the final thing I did is I applied for graduate school while still active duty to start that program when I got out. And I was able to apply for and take the GRE for free because I was active duty. And because there's so many, there really are just so many, a education center is not going to have access to all of this stuff. You have to go outside, go to the university that you want or the program that you want and talk to them. They have a veteran affairs department. Talk to the GRE center. They have a veteran affairs. Everybody has a veteran affairs department. There's more education support staff at every university than there is at the education center. And the people at that university are going to be able to help you a lot more.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned a few key points that I'll kind of elaborate on. First, starting off with the CLEP testing, I'm glad that you broke it down, told us what it is, and you're right, it does save you a tremendous amount of money because on average, for you to take those CLEP tests, I believe each test is roughly about $60. So that is something that you do not have to pay for. Especially if you're on active duty, you can just go to the education center and have someone proctor the test while you're taking it. Like you said, if you pass the test, now you have been accredited, and that helps you get to your end goal of either graduate degree, undergraduate degree a lot faster because you're able to test out and prove that you already have that knowledge. So that right there is definitely an amazing benefit that I've seen a lot of active duty service members take advantage of. And the other point that I wanted to touch on was when you talk about talking directly to the education system, the university that you want to go to, their veteran centers, I could not agree more. The issue with going to your local base is they have very limited resources and their scope is not as wide. I know when I was stationed in Miramar and even when I was stationed in Quantico and I would go to the education center, they had maybe 3 to 5 people working to help the entire base with things like filling out tuition assistance, with talking to guidance counselors at universities. So oftentimes they're so bogged down that you have to set an appointment. Maybe you're working on night shift, maybe you're on deployment and it doesn't really work out. So, much like Evan said, highly advise you contact these people directly, and them being part of that actual school that you want to go to, they can give you the exact detail. They're not going to say, oh, well, I think it's this. No, I work directly for the University of Arizona. I work directly for UPenn, whatever school it is. They will give you the resources, and oftentimes they know about benefits for veterans that even the education center on base does not know.
Because the education center doesn't know everything about every university. The university is going to be able to tell you, yep, okay, your application fee is waived, this is waived. It's just going to be specific to the program. Some universities have a better veterans department, some have a worse veterans department, but most of them are pretty good at this point.
Yes, exactly. So I'm definitely glad that we took the time to say that. Aside from those benefits, I just want to ask, you said that a lot of these things you didn't have to pay for, or when you did pay for them, you took it as a tax credit later. Can we kind of discuss that? Because I think that there's a lot of people that don't know the advantages of maybe paying out of pocket and filing that on a tax return. Can we kind of discuss that?
I think the specific tax program around this, I forget the exact name of it, but it's something about like the education and opportunity tax credits or something. You can only use them for a set amount of time in any one individual's life. I think it's possibly like 4 years. But anything that you do spend on education over that period of time, you can claim that on your taxes. And that's why the tax program exists. It's saying something to the effect of, if you invest in your education, we as a government are going to do everything we can to ensure that you are incentivized to do that for a minimum period of time. And so it's not an undue burden. So again, the specific benefits, slightly different by state, of course, but more or less, if you spend a little bit out of pocket, you can put all of that on your taxes, claim all of that, and you're going to be getting a lot of that back.
Yes, very true. I know when I was going to Penn State, that's exactly what I did. The tuition assistance did not cover my full cost of education at Penn State. So I think I was paying roughly like an additional $700 or something like that per class. But at the end of the day, it didn't really matter to me because I was getting an education from a school that I felt would enrich my life in the future, and I knew that it can be a tax incentive later. In addition to that, things like purchasing new computers or anything that's directly correlated to your education, those are also tax write offs. When I started going to school, it was time for me to upgrade my computer, so I bought a MacBook Air and I sat down with my CPA. I threw that on there and I got reimbursed for that later. So, just things for you guys to think about. We won't make today's episode too much about finance, but I do want you guys to know that if you are not pursuing your education due to financial strain, the military is incredible because it does take so much of that strain and pressure off of you. There's a lot of programs and resources out there for them to help fund your education. And again, if you do have to pay out of pocket, there may be opportunities for you to get that money reimbursed later down the road. So just something to think about there.
The phrase you use, I wholeheartedly agree with. You made a decision to go to university and through a program that you felt would actually enrich your life. And that's the mentality. And that's why I know maybe I'm kind of hating on the education centers a little bit here, but that pathway is kind of set up for a lot of different programs that you haven't heard of, you're not interested in, that are kind of one size fits all, cookie cutter, and designed to be, again, cheap. But it's like education, presumably, you want a degree that will enrich your life, not simply one that you got because it was cheap. And obviously, there are programs out there that are very cost efficient and rewarding. But the preponderance of them, if we just play a probability game, they're going to go in a direction where you are going on that path of discovery, not simply walking into a center that's designed around a more cost efficient and one size fits all principle.
Right. No, absolutely. I think that mentality is very important to have when you are going to invest so much time, energy, and in this case, money. Yes, it's not necessarily yours, it's the government's, but if you're going to invest that much into your education, you want to make sure that the program is going to give you the best return on investment. And for me, that's not necessarily a monetary value, right? Like for me, I knew pursuing an education, it wasn't so much about the amount of money I would make with my career getting out of school. It was, okay, if I go to this school and pursue this program, how many doors is it going to open? How many people is it going to allow me to network with? Because for me, that's far more valuable than money. So just depends on how you look at it, but I wholeheartedly agree with what Evan is saying. Do not try and take the easy route, find the cookie cutter school that is one size fits all. Just because it's cheaper does not always mean that it's a better deal when you look down, 10, 20 years from that point. So happy that you mentioned that, Evan. Going on to the next question, and it's kind of what I was discussing now, but how do you think continued education has opened your mind as well as opened doors when it comes to business or networking?
Well, I mean, people will take you seriously. You can call it fair or unfair, I don't know. But you have several degrees and certifications and interesting, educational as well as professional experiences. You're simply just going to be interacting with more people. You're going to have a wider base of things that you can talk about and talk about forcefully. A lot of people do get out of the military and they've obviously learned a lot about the military and they've been kind of inundated in a very specific culture, but that culture doesn't translate to any other culture for the most part, right? So learn something that a lot of other people know about and care about. A business is generally a pretty good one that's going to have utility, but any good program, you're instantly interacting with people on multiple levels in that discipline, so that there's going to be that type of a nexus. Just as an example, the easiest door to open up while you are a student, if you want to network or get access to a company or another organization that you're interested in maybe working with in the future or doing anything with in the future, the easiest open door ever is, hey, I'm a student and I'm doing a project on you. Like who says no to that? Who says no to some other human being finds me interesting and I can talk to them about what I do for this company, what challenges I'm facing with this organization. That's instantly an open door. On the one hand, you're going to learn something with that open door, but on the other hand, you're going to be interacting with a person who now probably likes you because you had an interview or a meeting with them or you showed curiosity. The advice that I'm giving right now, who actually does that? Nobody does that. Like if you actually utilize the full range of your student power, there's a tremendous amount of open doors with that type of capacity. That was something that I genuinely did a lot when I was in my first grad program at George Washington University in DC. I was in the international affairs program there, and that was more or less my approach for getting really interesting internships, getting pretty interesting meetings with people within organizations and within industries than I would ordinarily be entitled to, because I was able to say, hey, I'm in the international affairs program at the Elliott School. And they're like, oh, I know someone that graduated there, or I used to go there. Now suddenly I'm able to have a 5-minute conversation with director of economic aid to Central Africa because of that. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of stuff about how doors can get opened through pursuing education.
Yes, I think much like joining a fraternity, joining the military, or some type of brotherhood, sisterhood, what have you, that's really where you get your biggest return on investment. And this is my opinion. Obviously, if you're going to become a lawyer, a doctor, yes, definitely the time you spend in the books is crucial to how you carry your work in the future. But for me, anytime I've pursued any form of education, whether that's through a traditional university, a certificate program, any type of advanced learning, my main thing that I wanted to get out of it was just get to know people, get to know what got them to that point, develop a genuine relationship, and building that network over time, I think, is what has led me to so many opportunities that I would have not had any other way. The amount of time you guys are investing in your education, yes, it is definitely important that you hit the books, you focus, you take the test seriously, but don't forget that there's still a critical human aspect to that education. Really, you need to form genuine relationships with those you study with, mentors, counselors. And like Evan said, for him, it opened up doors that he would have not had access to otherwise. Just because he went to a certain school or was in a certain program, it automatically gave him kind of a foot in the door to talk to more senior members just because he showed a genuine interest in what they were doing and they had a good amount of respect for what he was doing in pursuing his education. The last question I wanted to kind of dive into today was for those people who, again, maybe it's due to time or financial constraints. What is a piece of advice you give to those who have never used any of their education benefits?
You're crazy not to. I don't want to be mean, but it's nuts. Everybody else in the US has tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars of education debt. I made money to get several degrees and accreditations. You have that power too. If you served in the military, you have the power to quite literally get paid to get more degrees. The specific rundown for me: tuition assistance, undergrad, slept out of half of the stuff, and my military training gave me like 30 some credit hours. And then I had a few other credit hours from before I joined the military. So you basically walk in with almost half your degree done. You can just specialize in one program, clep out of the rest. I finished my degree in like 2 years while serving active duty. So that's completely possible. And you can do that for free or tiny bit out of pocket and then get back in your taxes. I then went to grad school at GW, 2 years, fully paid for, GI Bill, and I got paid BAH. And just now, and I mean literally just now, my final assignment is technically due in 2 days, but I've already turned it in. I've just finished my MBA, 100% paid for, and I got paid to do this at Washington State University. And I still have a few weeks of GI Bill left over. I don't know what to do with it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to find something to use it for. I can tell you that much. But in addition to that, I got accredited within Lean Six Sigma, which is a form of business accreditation. I went through that program for free. I studied abroad in the Philippines with George Mason University and went to a program there at an international peace building center where I was the only American in my entire program. Again, that was all paid for. There's probably even a few things that I'm missing here that I could probably find, but it's literally nuts. You're leaving $300,000 on the table, something like that, give or take 50,000 here or there, but you're leaving six figures on the table of money that's waiting to be spent to maximize the utility of this benefit for degree and accreditation seeking purposes. And you're going to get paid to do it because you get BAH while you're doing that. Now, obviously, you have to work really hard. I had a full-time job during all of this. I was never not working and going to school, but most programs are engineered, especially graduate programs, are typically engineered around someone that has a job or that's a professional. So everything is designed for you to be able to succeed and succeed big, like better than everybody. The advice is just go for it because you have this, again, you're leaving about $300,000 on the table. And I can't think of a more convincing argument than that.
Yes, well, thank you. And before we end today's episode, I do want to say that Evan and I are both under the agreement and understanding that maybe a formal college isn't necessarily your route. But like he said, there's other things that you could utilize this education benefit for. It doesn't have to necessarily be for a 4-year university, getting a business degree. Say you want to become a pilot, there's opportunities for you to utilize your education for that. If you want to get your AMP license, if you want to get certain accreditations, there's so many different opportunities.
The PMP certification, Project Management Professional, it's not that you don't have to do anything, but you almost don't have to do anything because there are programs out there that will certify you in PMP with some minor testing for free because they're basically saying you were in the military. If you had any degree of leadership within the military, you've already done project management. They're just going to give you some of the tools you need to kind of advance and formalize your knowledge, and they're going to give you that accreditation. Somebody walking around with military experience and a PMP certification, that's a very desirable certification to get.
Exactly. So, guys, hopefully the one thing that you take away from today's episode is that there are resources available for both yourselves, for your spouses, and in some cases, your children to go ahead and take your education and learning to the next level. Whether that's going to a formal school, whether that's getting a certification, there are tons of benefits out there. Over time, we will definitely continue to talk about these. We'll continue to talk about specific universities, such as Liberty University, that is very focused on spousal education. And they actually do offer cheaper accredited hours for military spouses. So that's, again, a topic that we'll discuss in the future because I think it's really important to educate us on. But unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. Evan, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on board. Thank you for sharing some of your expertise and knowledge, and we are definitely looking forward to talking to you again.
Kevin, I really appreciate it. This was a good time. Thank you for providing this resource to so many people. It's definitely needed.
Thanks for listening to The Unwavering. Please rate and comment on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star and a great comment, and we may just read it on a future episode. Also, follow us on social platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to check back with us next week.